The Swarm are a horrific nightmare, but even bad dreams can have a silver lining. The Shirren are just that. They are basically the only good thing to have come from the Swarm. They are pleasant, they are cheery, they are addicted to individualism. Yeah, let me get another one of those. What do you mean there was only one? Most of the common races find the Shirren agreeable enough, and they also make for good allies. And their telepathic communication is always a bonus, because their mouthpieces can be a little bit disconcerting. Shirrens have a pretty positive outlook when it comes to most of the common Starfinder races. However, they have a particular soft spot for the Ysoki. They find they can bond particularly well. They have a lot in common with the Ysoki because of their zest for life, as well as their communal aspects. Although the Shirren were born of one of the most violent and horrific species in the galaxy, they themselves are not very violent. Shirren, they love adventure, and they commonly sign up for starship crews, but they will more commonly take on more speaking roles. They will be ambassadors, they will be medics, they will be technicians. Mystic is also a popular choice for most Shirren. The Shirren love working as part of a team. This is something that they excel at.
Team players, each and every one of you. Yeah, well, there's no room for people who can't act in a team on my team. Excuse me.
Do not underestimate their pleasant nature. Shirrens are fiercely loyal, and they will fight to the death for their teammates with a ferocity that is reserved for only the strongest Vesk soldiers. And why are the Shirren so good at working as a team? That's because they used to be part of the Swarm, that giant floating mass of space bugs that moves onto a planet, consumes it, and then finds another one, and repeats this process over and over and over again. Even though the Shirren were part of the Swarm, not even they know where the Swarm originated from. They do know that when they freed themselves from the Swarm hive mind and they gained their consciousness, their free thought, their will, their independence, they broke themselves off from the Swarm and quite accidentally made contact with the Pact Worlds. Versailles was the first place that the Shirrens made contact with. They set up their first colonies here, and since then they have spread out among the Pact Worlds. Now the Shirrens, they define themselves by their individualism, and who could blame them, because when you're part of a hive mind, there is no such thing as individualism. There is only furthering the colony or furthering the greater good. Now, when the Shirrens gained their independence, they gained control over a special region of the brain. I'm specifically referring to the pleasure and pain systems within the brain, normally a self-defense or reward mechanism for, most normal people. But the Shirrens, they take this to a whole nother level. Simply put, making decisions as a Shirren can cause pleasure. This also caused a unique problem to specifically the Shirren, referred to as option junkies. These Shirren, that's all they do, is they make decisions, and they are addicted to this wave of pleasurable neurotransmitters that happens whenever they make a decision. This is literally how they become addicted to individualism, or decision making if you want to split hairs. One of the best ways to anger a Shirren or get on their bad side is to remove their ability for individual choices, because when you block a Shirren from making choices that affect them as an individual, you are removing what gives them purpose. Some Shirren will even derive their purpose from faith, but they still have that need for choices. However, in this scenario, their decision-making process affects them not just now, but affects them in the afterlife. And even though not every Shirren is an options junkie, in spite of their aggressive individualism for themselves, this doesn't mean that they've lost their community aspect. Sometimes it's very hard to break old habits, not that working together and living in a community is a bad thing. The Shirren commonly fall into the lawful good alignment if you still use this in your games. However, there are definitely some Shirren who misinterpret loyalty, they misinterpret the greater good. This has definitely led some Shirren down the wrong pathways, assuming that their actions are for the greater good, although their actions are still quite dangerous. Now, the Shirren were part of the Swarm. The Swarm is an insect-like species that moves across the galaxies. Originally referred to as the Kucharn, they are consumed with a singular-minded purpose, and that is to consume everything on the planet and breed and adapt the best parts of alien species into themselves. It's through this process that the Shirren happened nearly on accident, or maybe they are the total evolution of the Swarm. Generations ago, a mutation happened in the Swarm DNA, and this caused the subspecies to diverge from the rest of the hive. The new subcolony, they no longer subscribed to the Swarm's mindless consumption. Boom. That's how you get the Shirren. A near cosmic accident. Although if you think about it, the Swarm, once they consumed everything in the universe, they would just die of starvation. And since the Swarm is constantly trying to upgrade themselves, maybe the Shirren were the next stage in their evolution process. Something that could learn, think, and adapt, work with species to fight against the coming onslaught of the space bugs. Maybe it was just an upgrade that didn't go as planned. So I know what you're thinking. How do you make more baby Shirrens? Well, you see, when a mommy Shirren and a daddy Shirren love each other very much, the mommy and the daddy give their genetic material to a host, and the host births the baby. The host also adds their genetic material and their own immunities, so you better find a genetically superior host. This means that there are 3 genders for the Shirren society: male, female, and host. And it's also not uncommon for Shirrens to have a 3-partner marriage. So when all 3 are in sync, a new baby Shirren larva is born. They stay in this larva worm-like state for roughly 2 years, and the parents, they will carry it around in a special sack, a special container, so that it can still see the world, but still be protected from the world. Let's cover some fluff around the Shirren, their vital stats, then we can talk about the kinds of Shirren that exist. The average height for a Shirren is between 5 and 6 feet. They also weigh between 100 and 150 pounds on average, so they are thin bean poles. They also have a little bit shorter of an average lifespan, so this means their age of maturity also starts a little bit lower. You are considered a grown adult when you are 5 years old, and they live to a near maximum of 70 years. Now, because of their insect bodies, their chitin hides, they will have 6 hit points to start, and you will get +2 Constitution, +2 Wisdom, and -2 Charisma. Now, because of the antennae that the Shirrens possess, they also have blind sense for 30 feet. Now, this only works in the air, so they can sense disturbances or vibrations in the air for 30 feet. Now, because the Shirren are so good at working together as a team, they can re-roll 1 attack roll once per day, as long as an ally is within 10 feet of them. The Shirren are also very curious. They love learning about new cultures, new societies. Because of this, they will get a +2 racial bonus to diplomacy checks, as well as culture checks. The Shirren also have telepathy. Now, this only works for a range of 30 feet, and they can only communicate with those that they share a same language with. Now, within the character operations manual, there is also some alternate builds that you could use for the Shirren. These alternate builds represent the Shirren maintaining more of their swarm traits, their swarm heritage, than the average Shirren. The Courtier Shirren, they served the swarm leaders, conveying orders, acting as go-betweens. These Shirren understand the dynamics of personal power, and they respect it. These particular Shirren, they are not suited for physical labor, so they will have +2 intelligence, +2 charisma, and -2 for strength. There were also the scout-style Shirren. These ones have +2 dexterity, +2 intelligence, and -2 for constitution. And of course, there was the worker Shirren. These ones were bioengineered for physical labor, and it shows. +2 strength, +2 dexterity, and -2 to charisma. There's also some alternate features for the Shirren. For example, cultural assimilation, which will replace cultural fascination. This allows them to easily integrate into another culture, giving them +2 to their culture checks and +2 to disguise checks. Another option is Hive Defense, which will replace the Communalism ability. If an ally is within 10 feet of the Shirren once per day, that Shirren can allow them to re-roll a saving throw and use the higher result. There's also Individual Obsession. Now, in order to take this, you have to replace 2 abilities of your Shirren. That would be Communalism and Cultural Fascination. Essentially, the Shirren gets to pick another skill and it becomes a class skill, and they get a bonus whenever they have to use this skill of +2, and every level they gain 1 skill point which goes into this skill above and beyond what they would already get. And then of course, if you just want to be a language boss, you take Language Acculturation. This replaces Cultural Fascination. Essentially, the Shirren gains +2 to their culture checks, and every skill rank that goes into culture, they gain 2 languages instead of 1. Now, I have talked at great length about the Shirren. I have casually mentioned the Swarm. They are the greatest threat the Pact Worlds has ever faced. And if you'd like to learn a little bit more about them, click on the video on your screen now. Thank you to all of my patrons who continue to support me and the channel. All of your support is greatly appreciated. My name's Nathaniel. Thanks for stopping by, everyone.